This episode is sponsored by the Using the Power of Your Voice e-guide, your guide to launching your podcast in 30 days. Slayers, are you feeling a call from God to start a podcast but uncertain about where to begin or what you'll need? Creating a podcast can be a fulfilling and enjoyable experience. Whether you're interested in sharing your expertise on a specific subject, conducting engaging interviews, or educating and entertaining your listeners, podcasting can help you establish strong connections and foster a sense of community. Using the Power of Your Voice is a guide to start your podcast in just 30 days, and it's perfect for anyone who is clear that God told them to start a podcast. Whether you're nervous about recording or unsure where to start, this guide will provide you with valuable insights and actionable steps to help you record and launch in 30 days. In this guide, you'll learn to identify your why, find your topic, learn where to host your podcast, and what equipment you need to start. If you are ready to be obedient to your calling and start your own podcast in just 30 days, download your copy of Using the Power of Your Voice today by going to www.slangselfdoubt.com/podcast. That's www.slangselfdoubt.com/podcast. Thank you for your support, and I can't wait for you to start using the power of your voice. You're listening to the Slaying Self-Doubt podcast with Coach Felicia, where we empower Black women to overcome their doubts, fears, and insecurities in order to give birth to their God-given purpose. Join me and sometimes some of my friends on our journey as we remind you that you are not alone. I'm Felicia Wallace, and together we will find our fears and slay them. Welcome back to another episode of the Slaying Self-Doubt podcast. I am here with Coach Lee from Legal Lee. Hey, how are you?
Hey, welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome. So you guys, this we're in a new year, but I told y'all last year that I posted this thread, and that thing blew up and people were asking, and I ended up having enough episodes, interviews rather, for the remainder of the year. And then y'all know 2024 was wonky anyway, but either way, we had women on the waiting list, and Coach Lee was one of the women who said, yep, I still want to come on here and share my story. So we are here. Thank you so much for responding to the thread and then responding to the email to say, yes, I still want to, because you never know where people are. Like, that was the early part of last year, and I was just like, I don't even know if people still doing what they said they were doing, a year ago. So I'm grateful that you are here. And so before we get started, can you just introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about how you got started?
Yes, definitely. I am Coach Lee. I'm a criminal defense attorney by day, productivity and
Okay.
accountability coach, like I like to say throughout. Pandemic is how I got started. Like I've
Mm.
always been probably type A personality, like a planner, do this, do that. But people have
Mm-hmm.
always asked me, how do you do it all? How do you do all the things? Like, how do you do law but still meal prep, take care of yourself? I was officiating basketball at the time. Like, how do you do all this stuff? And I didn't realize that people struggle with productivity and accountability. But people was always like, you should be a life coach. And I'm like, who got time for that? Full-time lawyer here, doing all these other things, don't have space to add another thing to the to-do list. Then the pandemic happened, and literally about a week in, I was like, thankfully didn't lose my job, but we working from home. We not doing
Mm-hmm.
trials, we not going to court. And so my job was like, we don't necessarily need you to be logged on from 8 to 5, 9 to 5, as long as you get your work done.
Yeah.
And the productivity side of me, it's like every day by lunchtime, I'm like, I've done everything I needed to do for the
Mm.
day. I'm not distracted by coworkers, phones ringing, things like that.
Yeah.
And all the thoughts of people saying like you should be a coach came back to me, and I was bored. I had read all the books, watched all the TV, did all the puzzles. Like I needed something else. Like I was going stir crazy in that
Wow.
like within the week. And so I started remembering all those things. And so if I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it right. So I started looking for coaching programs. I made it halfway through the first video, which was all of like a 5 to 7 minute intro video. And I was like, oh, this is why people say that. And so that's how I got started.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Uh-huh. No, I love that. One of the things is I say I am a firm believer that, through the global pandemic with all the negative things that happen and the horrible things that happen, there were so many things that were birthed from that time of isolation for a lot of people, and specifically for a lot of Black women. We were used it. I don't know if it's just something innate in us that, like, when we have to do something, like, purpose is built, right? Like, and so I can understand when you're busy doing all the things. It's not really like, oh, like you said, I had all these other things going on. How could I fit something else in? But then you was gonna turn around and say you was done your work by 11 o'clock. You know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to figure out, how do I get everything done by the middle of the day so that I can move on to the next thing, right? But I love that it was that you took action, right? Because you could have just been like, nah, I still, nobody knew how long we was going to be in quarantined or whatever. I can't remember what the words we were using back then, which seems like that is it's 5 years ago, y'all. I just want y'all to know. Seems like it was yesterday, but it seems like it was like 20 years ago, all at the
Yes.
same time. But it's really 5 years ago. But I think that I love that it was still in your heart, right? And it was still something that, even though people were saying it, like, you knew immediately. So what in the video, it was like, this is it. This is what people have been saying in me.
I can't remember exactly what it was, but I know they were essentially talking about like what coaching is, like essentially the motivation, the encouraging, like because coaching and therapy is different. So therapy is about the past, whereas
Mm-hmm.
coaching is about the present and going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So like I always think about, like, even when I watch somebody do something, it's like, it's an easier way to do this. Or
Yeah.
just like, hey, have you tried doing this? Like, I've always kind of been that person.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever it was in the video, it was like, oh, that's what coaching is? Like, got it. Like, it
Yeah. Yeah.
didn't really resonate that, yes, I don't think life coaching or coaching was that big a thing. Like, yes, it was, but it wasn't to like the
Mm-hmm.
everyday person. And so, agreed. The pandemic had it coming up a lot more, people needing coaching to figure out, like, how do I, like, now my kids are home, how do I do this? How do I
Yep.
do that? And I think it became more, I don't want to say popular, but maybe popular is the term. It was more exposure given to
Mm-hmm.
it. And
Agreed.
so it made more sense. And it was just something about them talking about coaching, explaining what it is, how it works. It was just like, oh,
Yeah.
I've been coaching.
Mm-hmm. And I think so your story is similar to mine in that, once even though I transitioned out of my job into um nothing at first, and then it was entrepreneurship, right? But coaching is something that I remember in my previous job. We did some type of, I don't know, some type of leadership training or whatever have you. Had to fill out this questionnaire, and what I was a coach. That's what it said. That was like how I led. Where, like, my counterpart, one of the ladies, hers was detective, and so there were all these different names. But I remember that kind of stuck with me throughout the time. And then even the same thing when I'm with you. Like, I wanted to do my due diligence. I was like, I'm gonna go through a coaching program, because you can do it without it. You don't have to. But I was like, for me, no, I'm gonna go ahead and go the route. And I felt the same way. Like, it was like, this is what I've been missing my entire life. Like, I needed these people, and it's a way that, like, I don't know. I also think it's the way that we think, that it's a certain
Yeah.
type of way of just like processing information and being able to see things that other people can't see. So, yeah, I'm excited about that for you and for me now. Then this conversation, right? So, how has self-doubt showed up in your journey?
Remember how I said, like, who got time to be a coach? How should I be a coach? All of that. And it's really funny because at the time, like coming into the pandemic, that would have been my 30th birthday year, or it was, because it was 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And growing up, like when I first became a lawyer, I was like, oh, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to open my own firm. So at like 28, 29, I started like looking at it and thinking about it. And I was like, actually, I don't want to do this. But then by 30, I had this coaching business. So it was like, I had a business. It wasn't the
Mm.
one I thought I was going to
Right,
have,
right,
but
right.
then I had it. And so I think for me, the due diligence part was, can I really do it? Like, can I
Mm.
start a coaching business? Are people really interested in it? Like, yes, people say you should do this, but then what does that look like when you got
Right.
this LLC and you're like, hey, I'm selling coaching. I'm doing coaching. Will you pay me to coach you?
Yeah.
that's a different side. So for me, it really was about the self-doubt really was getting out there to talk about myself. I've always been a yes, I'm willing to help, but I'm also a behind the scenes person.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't need to tell somebody that, oh, she helped me do this. Like, oh, something needs to be done. I'm gonna step up and do it. Like I see you struggling with the box, I'm gonna help you do it. You
Yeah.
struggling to set up this event, I'm not gonna just sit there and watch you struggle. So
Right.
I've always been a person to step up and be willing to help, but I
Mm-hmm.
also wasn't necessarily trying to be in the limelight about it.
Mm.
So being a coach, having a business, you are the business very much is getting out of the limelight and
Yeah.
stepping up. Because I remember even when I think it was when I first started working with the coach, I was saying how I wanted to use like my logo as my branding. Like I didn't want to be the face of the business, but then it was like, but you the person talking, like you are the like you literally are the face of the business. You are the coach. Like how you gonna use this logo, but everything is your voice. Like make it make sense.
Girl, what see what I say before I press record, right? I said I love these interviews, and every time before I interview, I pray and I say, Lord, whatever it is that you, like, however the flow of it's supposed to go, and just let it happen, because that is literally when I was even doing the podcast, it was just the name, and that was it, right? And I too was like, I don't have to be at the forefront. It doesn't have to be me. Like I can still do the work, and nobody gotta, like, it's me because you see me elsewhere, but I don't have to be the face of it. And so I understand that struggle of like the it's so weird, right? Because it's like it's not saying it's hard because you're not supposed to say that you're humble, right? But I believe that that is a humble way of thinking, right? Like, don't put it on me. The message is what it's supposed to be, right? Like, let the work show for itself. I don't want necessarily the accolades, but I'm wondering, right, if some of that ties into our self doubt, right? Why don't we want to be acknowledged for the things that we're doing? Why don't we want to celebrate? Like, show the celebration. We celebrate other people. We know what it is, but what do you think for you was like the thing that was like, I mean, I don't mind doing it, but I ain't trying to be the, like, I don't want to be out there like that. What do you think for you was what was coming up?
I think part of it was the law side of me, which is
Mm,
why I'm coaching in the coaching world because I'm a criminal defense attorney. I don't need my clients finding me. So the more that you put yourself out there and you doing this like as
mm-hmm.
the face of it, like I
Mm-hmm.
had to find the way, which is where becoming Coach Lee came into being. Like, yes, my face is still out there, but
Yeah.
Googling and searching my real name versus Coach
Mm-hmm.
Lee,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna probably eventually get to the same place, but
Yeah.
you gotta know what you're looking for.
Right, right.
And so
Yeah.
I think in the beginning it was that, like being that I work
Mm-hmm.
and what I do for work, the type of people that I represent.
You
Um,
ain't trying to be found.
right, exactly. But being a business, being a solopreneur,
Yeah. You got to be
you have
found.
to put yourself out there. So at first, I think it was the fear of how can I safely put myself out there
That's good.
to make
Yeah.
sure that I'm still protecting myself
Correct.
in that arena. And then, I mean, given that could have been an excuse as well of let me figure out I can't
Mm-hmm.
really get out there. I
Mm-hmm.
can't really do this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that's kind of like the safety aspect was the initial start.
Yeah.
Um, or at least what I use as the initial start for like
Right,
how
right, right, right. Yeah.
stuff out there.
No, I think that's good though. I mean that. So sometimes what is actual, right? Like that's a valid reason, right, to not want to do it. It's not just like, oh, I don't want the attention. Like that's a valid reason. But I also think that oftentimes we can use a valid reason longer, right, than it needs to be. Like, okay, well, once at what point do you? Because you can still say that, right? Like, you're still in the same place. You're still an attorney, right? Even putting yourself out there and being on the podcast, right? Like these are the things. Like, but you have to grow your business, and so how are you managing? Even though if because I'm sure that that's still somewhere in there, right? Like, but how are you managing um maintaining that safety, right? But then also growing your business.
business pages. Like everything is under Coach Lee. So like changing the website, because in the beginning when I had the website, I was using my name, but going
Mm,
back, changing everything to Coach Lee, like everything is legally me, like all the handles,
yeah.
all the things. So my Instagram page is like it's the only page. Like it's
Right.
me because
Yes.
I'm showing up, and what I do as a coach is me in living life. I'm showing you how to be productive, how to be accountable,
Mm-hmm.
how I manage. Like yes, if you watch my stories, even if you read the captions of my posts, you're gonna hear me talk about work, but I'm showing you how I do both. I'm
Right.
showing you.
Right.
So for me, it was doing the part that I could to like, changing the names to protect myself,
Yeah.
but also making sure that in showing up, I'm truly showing up and showing you
Yeah.
how I do this. Y'all asked me, I started this business because y'all were asking me, how do I do it all in all these roles? Let me literally come along. Let me show
Yeah.
you
Show
how
you
I
how to
do
do.
it all.
Yeah. The other thing I like that you separated the two, even though it's a part of you, right? Yeah, oftentimes it's some that it ties in versus like this is Coach Lee. You are this is what you're gonna see. This is what's gonna be that side. Gotta stay over there until I need to be over there, right? So I like that. So what have you learned about yourself during this journey that you didn't know before?
Ooh, ooh. What, resilience,
Mm.
strength,
Mm-hmm.
um, having to be confident enough to show up, and like I love what I do. Like I have no problem talking and speaking. Lawyer, I can think on my feet, talk. Like I don't public speaking. I've been doing like oratorical contests literally since elementary school.
Mm.
So me talking, me speaking, me writing was never the issue.
Yeah.
But again, even in doing those things, for me it was, there was a time for them. Like you're speaking on this date. So it was like turn it on, turn it
Turn it
off.
off. Yeah.
But I think as a business, as the face of a business, you almost have to be that 24/7,
Yeah.
because you never know when an opportunity might come up to talk about your business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even in what I do at work, people who follow me, like they know that I'm Coach Lee. They're like, girl, I be seeing you and I know I need this. And attorneys have been some of my biggest, not biggest, but some of my more recent like clients. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I see what you do. Help me do this.
Right. Help me.
Um, And so, like resilience and being willing to pivot. Because something I
Mm.
used to say a lot. And last year, I stopped myself from saying it, or like halfway through the year, it switched. And this year, I'm embracing that I'm not saying it anymore, but I'm going to say it for the podcast purposes.
Okay.
But I used to say, I don't like change. But the
Mm.
reality wasn't that I didn't like change. I don't mind changing, but I want to change on my terms. And I don't
Mm.
like sudden changes. So what I realized last year wasn't that I don't like change. I just don't like sudden changes because I want to control it.
Mm.
I can't
Mm.
control what happens, but I can control how I respond.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I started realizing was it's not so much change that I don't like. It's what's my new plan with this? How am I going to pivot? How am I going to adjust with it?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that it's not that I don't like change. It's how the change is happening or what I do in response to the change.
Yeah. No, that's good. So I want to something that you said about because change is
Inevitable.
inevitable. Like it's the only thing that's constant is change. We
Exactly.
moment to moment, second by second, right? Something is going to be different, right? But let's talk about the control part, right? Like, because I think that even in what you're doing, right, and this would I would have it that it ties into your coaching, right? Because that a lot of your clients, the reason why they're not productive is because of control. They're either holding on to too much stuff or not wanting to let go of certain things or wanting things to be a particular way, right? So for you, in knowing that you don't like sudden change because you want to control, how has that shown up for you in your business, in as far as like in your business or personally, like no, now that you are more aware of that?
I would say last year is where I really realized it because work was a constant change. Like
Mm,
I came into 2024 with like, okay, I got this new structure for how it is I'm going to work through my cases. I was implementing it in January, and then some things changed at work to where I had to take on additional
yeah.
responsibilities. And I'm like, okay, this system isn't going to work with this additional responsibilities, because the additional responsibilities was more cases. And it wasn't like, I do more like the murders, the homicides, the bad cases is what
Oh,
my primary,
you
like
working,
I'm the
working.
major crimes attorney. Right. But then I was taking on these misdemeanor cases, which in comparison, misdemeanors take more work because they're the lower level ones. So these people oftentimes haven't been in trouble in a lot. They have all these needs. Whereas those with the bigger cases, they like, I know this is going to take a while. And so my time had to be divided differently. Like, I need more time to work on these cases, but these cases, the misdemeanors, want more time. And so the system that I created worked well for the cases that I was
Right.
having.
Yeah.
But then when I had these additional responsibilities, I'm like, this isn't going to work. So what it became was, what's a new system that I can create where I'm having this? So then I got a system in place to where I was doing both. And then thankfully it was like, okay, we're taking this back off. And I'm like, okay, cool. So now how do I go back to this system? And so it really became a pattern or a process of figuring out what works and what works in this season, because the need for change and or the need for control is, we want to stick with something that isn't working longer than we should, or we don't want to change because this has always worked, where we see that it's no longer working. And so even in like life and business or coaching and my job, because people sometimes even ask me like, how do you go from coaching to law? Like, they're not the same. But I look at it and say they almost are the same, because as a coach, as well as an attorney, I don't choose the cases that are assigned to me. I don't choose the struggle that my clients have. But either way, I have to figure out what's the solution that's going to come out of it. And so in understanding that and like working through that, I think that's where the control versus the change and the pivoting part kind of like intersect.
Yeah. No, that's good. See, now I'm about that. Okay, so before I get into it, because let's talk about the business so that I can ask more questions about this. So I'm gonna circle back to this so that we get. So before we get into some of the things that you are, get, can you tell us about Coach Lee and the business and the Legally Lee business? What it is that you do? What is what is it that you do? And then while you talking, I'm gonna write this question down so I don't forget.
All right. So as a coach, what I do is I help people, like I'm here to help empower you to change the way that people look at planning, look at productivity. People often think that planning and productivity is so hard and that they can't do this and they can't do that. But the reality is that we do all the time. And so what I really realized, especially like last year, I guess you can say niching down a little bit more, is that like I'm trying to help transform the lives of those, especially in corporate, because a lot of people, whether you have a business or not, you're still working full time.
Yeah.
And oftentimes because of work and the 9 to 5, you feel trapped in like the demands of your job and trying to show up and be the best version of yourself at work, that it leaves you drained when it comes to your passions and your purposes outside of work. So I'm all about helping you to transform your life to where you can have that work-life balance, so that you can like master time management. Because if you can master time management at work, you're not going to be working late. You're not bringing work home, which means as a result, you have this boundary and you're able to have and live and thrive at work as well as at home without compromising your personal life for the sake of your career. You can do both, but you can have both. So I'm all about like helping you to figure out like, what are the barriers to productivity, to getting things done, to boundaries, to time management, to figure out how to help you live your best life in all areas of your life. So it's not just I live my best life at work, but not at home. I live my best life at home, but work surface. I want you to see that you can have it all, but having it all is about balance and figuring out what that looks like for you.
No, that's good. So now extra questions came up. But okay, master. Okay, my first question is for someone who's listening, which I think that oftentimes I would say that one of the hardest jobs as a coach is convincing people. No, I don't use the word. I'm gonna just say it because I can't think of it in a better way. But convincing people that what you are offering is something that they need, right? Even when but they don't know how to identify it, right? So when I first started, even with slaying self doubt, before the coaching part, like the podcast was the first thing, and it was kind of like the number of people that was like, I didn't realize that that's how self doubt showed up. I didn't realize that this is the thing that it looks like. And so now, because now that I've been doing it long enough, now I can see when I'm talking to a person, like, you ever thought that that could be because, you know what I mean? Like, now I can pull it out, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so my one of the things that you said was about the barriers. What are some of the barriers that most people don't realize is stopping them from good mastering their time management, having boundaries, releasing control, and pivoting when need be? Because one of the I'm trying to figure out how to put it together. Because one of the things you said was people hold on to stuff longer than it needs to be, and so out of like that control. And oftentimes when we find ourselves in those spaces, something else may have moved on, but we still in the same place, right? So, what do you think are some of the barriers that? What have you seen are some of the barriers that people have? That yeah, there we go.
So I think what I'm hearing you ask essentially is what keeps you stuck or what makes you not realize
I
that
see what you just
what
did
you
there. You just
have
coached me. You
ain't
just
working.
coached me. You know that, right? What I hear you say, y'all. She just coached me. So let me
Look, so
be
you got to make
clear.
sure you understand the question
Uh
and make sure
huh.
you
Uh
answer it the
huh.
right way. And this is where the legal side of me comes into play because I'm like, what I'm hearing you say, client, is
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
this is how
Yes.
they work together.
Yes.
But I think it's we get stuck, like even like taking it out of the coaching realm for a second. Like if you think about foods that you eat,
Mm-hmm.
when we was little, we could eat McDonald's, junk food, chips all day long, then put on a pound. And we still over here as we get older, still trying to eat junk food, McDonald's, all,
Mm-hmm.
all the
Mm-hmm.
food and sit down and go to sleep afterwards and wondering why we gaining weight.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
don't have the same body, we don't have the same metabolism. Same thing happens in life. You're still trying to follow the same schedule that you followed in college. In college,
Mm.
you weren't working. You might not
Mm-hmm.
have had kids. You might not have been trying to work out so you don't put them pounds on
Right. Right.
because at that time you still had that good metabolism. You now have kids, you now have a spouse, you now have whatever the additional roles are, but we're still trying to do this because this worked then. Why won't it work now?
Yeah.
You're not taking into account the additions. And so
Yeah.
even with me like starting a business, for example, when I was saying like I didn't have time, I didn't have the capacity. But
Mm.
when the world shut down, and so some responsibilities went away, like I was mentioning officiating basketball. Because school and stuff was virtual, they weren't doing basketball. So now my evenings were free. And
Yeah.
so though I never added basketball back in, as the world slowly started opening back up, I had built a schedule to where my business fit into me working. And as
Mm.
things slowly were added back in, I was able to slightly adjust
Mm-hmm.
to keep the things that I truly wanted. I saw that basketball, I didn't really want to do it anymore. Like,
Mm.
I don't really want to drive around
Yeah.
multiple counties after work and all the things. But when it comes to like clients or potential clients, or even you looking at yourself to ask, like, where am I struggling?
Yeah.
What are you still trying to do? Because it worked this way, but you're not taking into account what has changed about you or the
Mm.
situation. And
Mm.
so are you stressed out? Are you overwhelmed? Do you feel like you never have time for self or you never have time to do X, Y, and Z, that there's not enough hours in the day,
Yeah.
but yet and still you find time to sit on the couch and watch Netflix all weekend?
And binge watch 10 episodes of something.
But you don't have time.
Right. Or your
You
timer goes
have the
off on
time.
Instagram and says that you've been here 2 hours. Yeah. Yeah.
You have the time,
Mm-hmm.
but what are you using the time for? How are you using the time? I'm not saying you got to give up binge watching TV, but what else can you add in while you're binge watching TV?
Yeah.
Could you be washing them clothes that you say you don't have time to wash? Could you, while you sitting there watching that TV, be folding those clothes
Right.
on the commercial breaks while it's transitioning, going to put the clothes up? So
Mm-hmm.
it's not that we don't have time or there's not enough time in the day. What are you doing with your time? How are you using it? Where are you not taking into account the changes in your life that have occurred from then when this fully worked and you had no issues to
Yeah.
now where you're struggling in some way?
Yeah. No, that is so good. And I think it's just I feel like that this conversation is always needed, no matter what time of year it is, no matter what the season is, because things change, right? And you could have a health challenge, anything, your job challenge, a change. Well, like you said, it things can you have to be able to be flexible, right? And I agree that a lot of times we're so used to doing a certain thing that when change happens, it disrupts our sense of normalcy, right? And so for some people, it's and even in you saying that, it makes me think. I wonder if people who are like that sometimes, who have like big reactions to like small changes, right? Because it feels like it shifts so many things. And I think for me, over the years, I've had to. You get it, like you say, you get into certain habits, something happens, and then it's like, oh my gosh, now this, blah blah blah. It threw everything off, but really, did it? Is it really thrown everything off? Like, do you really feel that way? And for me, I've had to like, I know I've gotten a whole lot better with control, right?
Ooh,
Just
you and me both.
I've been I think life teaches you that you do not. It's an illusion, right? It is an illusion. You actually don't have control. You try to control people's perception of you or the things around you, or try to control people, but you yourself have no control, because we see that things happen every single day, right? um One of the things that I wanted to ask in regards to this is mastering time management for somebody who is listening and is like, I just need like one thing. Like, what's one thing I could start doing to like really manage my time better? Because I feel like I hear that often, especially for people who wear multiple hats, or have multiple roles. That seems to be a reoccurring thing. Like, it doesn't feel like you have enough time. But to your point, where are you putting your time? But if I had to do something that was going to be productive, that was going to like one like really good takeaway that somebody could take from this call, 1 to 3, if you have three, what would be a way that somebody can start mastering their time?
I can give you three because they,
Oh,
to me, they go together.
okay, then let's
Brain
go.
dump, to-do list, calendar, because they go together. Do a brain dump. Everything that's
Mm,
in your head, put it on paper. You're thinking about it, so it's taking up space in your brain. So if you
wow.
take the time to write it down, now you're able to take action on it, or at least clear the space for you. How often do you walk in the one room, and while you go in that room, you're reminding yourself, remember this, remember this, remember this, and then when you get back, you forget. Now, I'm not
Yeah.
telling you like, literally go write that down, but like
Right.
if we clear our mental space of all the things we're trying to hold in our head, grocery store, work, business, like all the things we're trying to hold in, write it
Mm-hmm.
down. So do a brain dump and clear your head. Anything that's in your head that you're thinking about that you need to do, whether it's today, tomorrow, by the end of the month, before the year is up, write it
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
Turn that into a to-do list, meaning when am I going to do it? Is this something that needs to be done now, this week, this month, or later? Or is it something I can delegate?
Mm.
In a
Mm.
calendar, because we talk about how much time you do or don't have. If you actually are putting things on your calendar and you fill it in, you'll start seeing how much time you do or don't have, or how you can combine some of those tasks together, or where you can put those things. Because
Yeah.
like grocery store, for example, if you pass the grocery store on your way home but you don't have anything to do after work, instead of you leaving your house just to go to the grocery store, can you just go grocery shopping on your way home?
Mm. Mm.
Can you make
Yeah.
that phone call while you driving to work to set that dentist appointment, that doctor's appointment?
Yeah.
Or I've been meaning to catch up with this friend. You got an hour commute, you got a 30-minute commute, you got a whatever amount of commute. Can I call them then? Like, how
Yeah.
can we start fitting fitting what we need to do into our life instead of making life fit in? Like, they go together. Fit what you need
Mm.
to do into your life so that life fits into what you need to do.
Yeah. No, that's good. I like that. I the brain dumping part. It's like that right there was like, even when you said it, I was like, oh man, that's so smart, right? Like, because I think even with to-do lists, like I used to say, I'm not a list person. I was just not. I used to work backwards, and I think I still kind of do, where I write down what I've done versus what I need to do. Very seldomly do I write down what I need to do, but I go backwards, like, oh, I did this, I did that, I did that, but then I still feel like I
You
should have
could be
been doing
mad.
something else, right? Like, oh, I did something I missed. And just thinking about like taking everything out of your brain. Because initially I was going to ask, well, how often should you brain dump? And then I thought to myself, like, I probably need it daily, because I hold so much in my brain for so many different things, right? Like you said, like you got all these different roles, and stuff pops up whenever something happens, right? Between work, the business, being a wife, being a mom. I got a rising senior. So, I'm like colleges now on my, but because it's not like here, right? I be feeling like I got more time. but I know I don't have more time. And so it's like when it's like I'll see an email and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then you feel like frantic. They're like, I need you to do this right now. And I notice that I make others frantic because now, because I have all the information up here, nobody else knows. Nobody else knows what's happening up here. And so when something happens, people are like, why are you acting like, because it's really been here for 4 years. So do you recommend brain dumping every day?
In the beginning, yes,
Mm,
because you have to get used to it. So it's like building a habit. At a minimum, once a week.
okay.
I do mine on Saturday. I brain dump and then I make my to do list for the next week.
Mm,
Now, when things do pop up, like hey, you got this new project that just came, that whether
yeah.
it was on this to do list or not, or i.e. change happened, that's how I started to start saying it's not that I don't like change. I just need to be able to have some aspect of control of it. So
Yeah.
when things change and it's like, hey, we need you to now do all of this, that's when I started getting, just like you said, oh goodness.
Wait a minute. I already had this stuff planned out.
Right. When I start getting like frantic, that's when I know I need to do a brain dump, because
Mm,
something new got thrown at me. And so therefore it's throwing off the schedule that I had already made. So if I take time
mm,
to do a brain dump, how can I pivot and adjust my schedule? And maybe I'll write it down and see that, oh, it's not that bad. She needs
right.
to do that. I can do that right here. I already said this day was going to be a chill office day for me to catch up on stuff. I might have been thinking I was catching up on, past stuff, but here's a new thing that I can catch up on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, okay, I need to adjust this, or they're trying to flip this time. I'm needed in court. Oh, I got a day off. It's a long weekend. How can I
Yeah.
utilize this time to get ahead? So
Mm-hmm.
starting out, you might feel like you need to do it all the time. What I often tell people to do is, when you do your first brain dump, like set a timer for 30 minutes. And you're gonna be like, 30 minutes, I don't got 30 minutes worth of stuff worth to do. But you do. But the more that you do it,
The less time
now
you
that
need.
I do it every week, the only time that I truly have to do it during the week is when something new pops up, or something happens either with an item that was on my to-do list and it expands,
Right. Yeah.
and or something, life and something pops up. And the reason I say 30 minutes is because after 5-10 minutes, you're gonna be like, okay, I wrote everything down. But then the reverse comes into place when you start looking at and reading the list of what did you write down. That
Mm-hmm.
might spider into another task. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this relates to this, so
Yeah.
let me write that down. Or
Yeah.
seeing somebody's name remind you of somebody else you need to call, or something else you need to do that might not be a right now thing, but
Yeah.
reading it triggers that, okay, in 6 months I need to do this thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so once after that 20-30 minute timer come up, you're gonna feel so much lighter, so empty,
Yeah.
because it's like, oh,
Right. Listen, I'm
okay.
telling you, as you telling me this, I'm I'm literally in my head like, I wonder if I should say, like, do one for this thing, because what I was thinking was like one for work, one for personal, one for business, right? That it's like separate brain dumps. Even in that 30 minutes, like, okay, spend, 10 minutes on this, 10 minutes on this, 10 minutes on that. If I break it up into those three things, and you'll see what ties together, like you said, what can I do while I'm also doing this, if I need to, you know and I also think in a way that life is just different. Like you were talking earlier about how things was back in the day. Back in the day, you did have to call everybody that you needed to have a connection with, right? I have been recently with a lot of my friends been doing voice notes, and that is how we keep in communication. And sometimes the voice notes are 4 minutes and sometimes they 10, right? And another set of my friends, we do I saw this trend on social media where people were doing Waffle Wednesday, where they would send video notes. It seemed like, I don't know where it started, but the video I saw was of these guys who were doing these weekly checkups with their friends via these video notes. And so me and my friends started doing it. And so one of those things about the time management, instead of me thinking that I need to call you, like, I'll just send a video. And now I've said what I've needed to say, and I can check that off my list, right? So the thing, like, instead of having to sit on the phone and wait for somebody to pick up so you can make this appointment, do they have a website where you can request an appointment, right? And you just go ahead, and while you're maybe sitting on a meeting that or something that you don't, I mean, you paying attention, but you can multitask. You know what I'm saying, right?
It's
Like,
your time. They're not calling
right,
on you yet. You
hey,
got time.
just chime in. I agree. I agree. Meanwhile, I need to schedule my mammogram. So there's ways that you, like you said, like you can try to fit, but if you are not putting it all down on paper. And I agree with, I definitely agree with that. And for me, that is something I'm going to probably start doing. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. See, I told y'all the Lord be knowing who I need to talk to and when I need to talk to them, regardless of when the episode airs. So y'all, I always say, these interviews for real be for me. Y'all just be listening. That's just really what it boils down to. But yeah, so okay. One of my last questions before we hop off is about boundaries. So when we have these changes that we are now going to make for ourselves, everybody around us ain't going to like that, right?
Mhm.
How do we? What are your what's your encouragement in setting proper boundaries with people and how to respond to people who they not following this boundary?
I think it's levels to it. Number one, no is a complete sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Some people you literally owe no, technically no one you owe an explanation to. Some
Yeah.
people you want to give an explanation to because maybe they're close and you feel like, okay, this might change the dynamic. Maybe we used to talk every Wednesday and I'm like, Wednesdays actually don't work for me anymore. Like maybe we have the set time where we're gonna do our voice notes, or we used to talk for an hour and a half. Can we cut it down to this? Because I'm
Yeah.
gonna talk to you while
Yeah.
I'm on my walk on Wednesdays.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
my walk is gonna be a 45-minute walk. So I might not have
Mm-hmm.
an hour and a half for you anymore. I might have 45 minutes, but we can
Yeah.
still do it. Knowing that no is a complete sentence, and that as you work on creating and implementing the boundaries, show them better than you can tell them.
Mm.
And in some ways that might be hard, but in some ways it might not be as hard as you think. Some people, when I say they don't care, I don't mean it in the sense that they don't care about you. Some people just was waiting, like they didn't know that this was inconvenient to you because you always picked up the phone, you always did the thing. So one boundary that I had, or one thing that I started doing was, like, after the pandemic and coming out of it, with starting the business, I started waking up earlier because I needed time to work my business.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm working full time and when I get off, if I want to have space for coaching clients, when do I do the stuff that I need to do, the back end stuff? When do I do my business personal development? When do I, prep stuff?
Mm-hmm.
If working full time and then I want to have the evenings for coaching,
Yeah.
I started going to bed early. Like I go to bed at 8:30. And so going to bed at 8:30, I get off work at 5. I got about an hour drive home. I get home about 6. So my coaching calendar is open for, an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So that's only 1 to 2 people that I can talk to a night.
Yeah.
Before I go to bed. But I also need to be at bed at 8:30 because, don't gasp when I say this, I wake up at 2:30. But I wake up at 2:30, do my morning routine. I have about an hour, hour and a half to work my business before I do my workout, take a shower, and get ready to leave for work at 7.
Okay. Well,
so like once I say what I'm doing in that time, you like, okay, it makes sense.
It makes sense.
But to get up at 2:30, I gotta be in bed.
Yeah, yeah.
And so my dad, this was real hard for my daddy to understand that Alicia, that Coach Lee go to bed at 8:30.
Yes.
Because he's more of a night owl.
Mm-hmm.
And so he would be calling like 7, 8 o'clock-ish, and it's like, you sound tired. You in the bed? Yes, Dad. So you really go to bed at 8:30? Yes. But at the same time, because like I live alone and it's me, I don't want him to be worried about his baby girl, as he always says.
Yeah.
So like I'm gonna answer the phone because I don't want you to think something wrong.
Right. But you get 5 minutes because I'm in the bed.
Well, he hears that I'm asleep, so it's like, oh, okay, you really is. So he would start calling earlier, or he would start calling on the weekends. So it took a little bit of training for him to really see that, oh, she's not just saying she go to bed. I called her at this time, and I hear in her voice that she's tired, or you hear the clanking of me, filling up my water bottle to put it up to go get in the bed. You hear me doing my nighttime routine. Oh, hold on, I'm brushing my teeth. Like, you hear signs of me if I'm not in the bed doing the things to prepare for the bed.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean by showing better than you can tell them.
Yeah.
Because if you don't enforce your boundaries, and if you don't show up for your boundaries, then why is anyone else going to respect it? And so like my phone, it's programmed now. These new smartphones, you got nighttime mode, wake up mode. So my phone automatically goes to silent after like 8:30, 8:45. So anybody who calling or texting me, like I don't hear the notification. Like I'm not hearing Facebook, Instagram, and everything else going off and dinging. but I also don't have to put the phone on vibrator silent. But it'll
Right.
still, like after if you call me more than 2 times, it'll still
Right. It'll
ring.
bring it.
Or
Yeah.
I have the
Mm-hmm.
people that you put on the list that you like. I know you're probably not gonna call me, or if you do, it's because it's important or it's an emergency.
Right.
So
Yeah.
therefore, I know you're not just gonna be calling me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for my daddy, he not on that list. Like my brother is though, because he'll call my brother. Have you talked to your sister?
Yeah.
Yes, she was. Because me and my brother talk like every day, whether it's a
Mm-hmm.
text or by phone. But my brother's on the list, so
Yeah.
he'll get through. And not that if my daddy didn't call me twice, it would
Right.
go
Right.
through.
Right.
But like
Yeah.
because I know that you like to call after the time, I had to put you. You didn't make the
Right. You
passenger
weren't.
list
You were not following the boundary, so you had to go over here
with the
until you.
regular people
Right. Right.
till we can get you on the list. Um, and so like showing it, like if you don't stand up for your own back, like if you're saying like I don't want to bring work home,
Mm-hmm.
that means you have to get your work done in the day so you don't have to bring the work home. I don't
Mm.
want to work on the weekends. What do I need to do during the week to make this happen?
Yeah.
So you have to first be your own boundary enforcer, because if you don't enforce it first, then people might hear you say I go to bed at 8:30, but if they see you online posting at 9, 10 o'clock,
Right. They. You up. You up. Yeah. No, that is so good. Now you just okay. So even with I love that you can yeah, show them right because I definitely agree with that part. I was talking to my mom yesterday about something and she kept talking about she has this thing about chips. She loves chips, and but all the time she's like, "I gotta stop this, that, and the third." And I say, "I'm just gonna say something to you." And I was like, I don't want you to be," I went and said like kind of coach mode, but daughtery
mm-hmm.
too. And I was just like, "I need you to stop saying that you're gonna do this if you're not gonna do it." I said because all it does is reiterate to yourself that you're failing at something. I was like, and you're losing trust with yourself. And I said, and then it adds guilt and shame. Well, now you feel like you have to tell me. I do not care. If you want the chips, eat the chips. Like it ain't a big deal to me. And so she was just like, well, no, because, and I was like, do we tease you about it? We do because we know you love it. Like my son loves cheese. He don't care what kind of cheese it is. If it's shredded cheese, he gonna eat it. And I have to be like, you ain't boy, if you don't like, he'll figure out a way, right? And so, but my thing is with her was like to your point of like the boundary, but then also owning that for yourself, right? Don't worry about other people. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about what I'm thinking. But if it's something that you want, have no shame about it. So the same thing applies with your boundaries. When you have this boundary in place, it's for you for a reason. Like you said it because you needed it. So nobody should make you feel bad about you creating something that you need for yourself because I can guarantee that if they set a boundary, you ain't crossing it. It's only when people feel like they can encourage you to like, oh, you don't really need that. You know, and those are the people in my. I was just thinking like, who are the people that you gonna have to do that with? The people who don't believe you, right? Because maybe you've said other things before and you didn't really follow through, and so some of this is gonna take trusting yourself and like proving to yourself that you can do it whatever it is this is any change, any new habit, any new thing that you're doing, regardless, that you have to you got to believe it for you first before anybody else will. So I am 100% agree with that, and you got to do it for yourself. You can't do it for, don't put the boundary in place for somebody else. Don't change your time management for somebody else. Like if you cool with how you live in your life, don't take no advice that we just gave you today.
Exactly. It's your life. Live it how you want.
Live it how you want, but don't keep talking about change and then doing nothing. I always say on head, faith without works is dead. You can write it down, you can journal it, you can whatever, you can pray about it. You could tell every person, you can go live, you can do all that. But if there's no action behind anything that you said, you blowing smoke. And we've all done it. So this is no judgment, right? We've all done it and we do it in different ways and at different times and with different things. But if it is something that you want to be different, you got to take the action to get it done.
Exactly.
Point
Don't
blank in the
complain
period.
about the results you didn't get from the work you didn't do.
Huh. Tell them again, sis. Tell them again.
Ain't about the results you didn't get from the work that you didn't do.
And that's
Faith
on
without
period.
works is dead.
Right. And that's on period. Okay. Coach Lee, can you tell the people how they can connect with you if they want just to get to know what you and what you're doing. And then also, y'all, if you've heard something that you're like, you know what, no, I need Coach Lee because this right here ain't working. This is not working for me. I want you to tell the people how they can connect with you.
I am at legally.me everywhere. That's LEGALLEE.me. Because I'm legally me. So I had to find a way to fuse a little bit of that law into
Yes.
to the Coach Lee. You can connect with me, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok if it's still around or not around to be determined. All the things. I'm all about the one-on-one. Like I'm all about one-on-one coaching because everybody is different. And I want you to be able to find what it is that works for you and helping you to figure out what that is. It's not about what works for me. Like, yes, I can tell you the tips, the tools, and understanding what it is. But like we were talking about even in the interview, this worked for you then.
Yeah.
Why does it not work for you now? What can we take from that to bring it into your present? So I'm all about one-on-one coaching to literally figure out like me and you working together. It's me and you
Yeah.
figuring
Yeah.
what works for you, what has worked, what doesn't work, and getting to what it is that you want in life. Yes, we're using my tips, my tools, my strategies, all of that, but it's ultimately about you. I'm not forcing me on you. Like you said, if you like how your life is going, keep
keep it pushing, baby. Keep it pushing.
Because I love how my life is going, and my life is going very structured and organized, and I love that for me.
Amen. Amen. Okay. No, I y'all already know all this information is going to be in the show notes, so you'll be able to click the link and get right to her pages and to her website and Instagram and all of that stuff. Coach Lee, thank you so much for sharing with us today. This was so. I know people here. I am always inspired by these stories and just what people are doing, and I'm like I every day I just thank God that He's given me this platform to be able to connect with other women, so that people can see what's possible. I told you that before we started recording that this is like my favorite thing to do within Slaying Self Doubt is to connect with other women, and so I'm just so grateful you said yes, and I am hoping that all the best for your business, both of them. Okay, both BOAF, and that after this you get more connections and more people are wanting to become more productive and transform their lives.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that Threads post because look, I didn't know about your podcast last year, but as a result of that post, I've been listening to your podcast and I'm a
Yes.
podcast junkie and when I subscribe to somebody, I go from the beginning to the present. So like even like listening to your journey to get to the now, like you leaving work, how you talked about like having the podcast that you didn't record, that you didn't do all of that. Like, so I've loved hearing your journey and like being here with you, like hearing your voice and just hearing you, I guess you could say live and in person versus just on the podcast has been
Yeah.
inspiring.
I
So
appreciate that. Thank you. Lately I have been saying, if you ain't this is let me tell you something. You listen to that first episode to now, you will see my evolution because baby, that joint was a mess. I know. I'm like one of them episodes. I was in my closet. Okay, so it's a lot of things that have changed, but I'm grateful to be on this journey, and I'm grateful that you have listened and that we've had the opportunity to connect, and then we will stay connected. All right, y'all, we are done with this. This actually, y'all, this is the first interview of 2025, and I cannot wait for the rest of this season because I know we already started off right. Okay. All right, people. But until next time, keep slaying, sis. See ya. All right, y'all, that's all for this week. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to share, subscribe, rate, and review. Remember to head over to Facebook and Instagram and follow me at Slaying Self Doubt. Oh, wait, don't forget, go to my YouTube channel and watch this episode, and remember to press the subscribe button. Until next week, see ya.